Hi, welcome to your next tech startup. Today I am speaking with Zach about machine learning engineering roles at Arthur. Series B, last round of funding was for 42 million. Zach, welcome to the show and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Isabel. So I am our VP of engineering here at Arthur. Been at the company for just under 3 years. Prior to that, I was at Palantir for about 9 years. And, I really joined Arthur because it's a company that really cares about making AI work, period. The origin of the company was the co-founder, Adam Wenchel, he's our CEO, was the VP of AI at Capital One, the first VP of AI there. And he left to build a product that he wished that he had while he was a VP. And really it boils down to how does a senior leader understand and know that the bets they're making as a company using AI and sort of machine learning systems, are those actually working? Are they generating revenue? How are we managing risk? And really, again, just fundamentally, like, are they working? And so the mission of Arthur today is really we want to make AI work, which couldn't be more prescient because given the industry that we're in and how quickly it's changing, there's a lot of snake oil being sold, lots of people buying, lots of people selling. And so our job is to really work with our customers, build the best possible product and experience, and really make sure that what they're trying to accomplish from a business perspective is accomplishing the goals at the right rate of return for what they're investing. Adam was doing this back in 2017. I think we incorporated 2018, and
Oh, wow.
before the generative AI craze. This is something that we've been trying to do for a while.
How big is your machine learning team?
Yeah, the machine learning team today is 3 engineers. Our machine learning engineers are extremely highly leveraged when it comes to product strategy and product discussions. And so, because of that combination of we need to stay on the bleeding edge and
Uh,
leverage the most recent and up-to-date research and technology,
mhm.
and because we're building a product that was primarily going to be used by other machine learning engineers,
Yeah.
a machine learning engineer has an enormous ability to impact the direction that we take the product in.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool role, and yeah, happy to get into some more what it is that they were working on.
One of the things that you had just said, these machine learning engineers are building for other machine learning engineers. Typically, there's going to be some expectation around education for machine learning engineers doing that type of work. And when you and I had talked earlier, it's actually the opposite. Well, I won't say the opposite, but talk a little bit about kind of when you think about who's the right fit for the role and thoughts on kind of how they like evolved into becoming a machine learning engineer.
Yeah, absolutely. We celebrate a culture of winning at Arthur. Really, what we're here to do is we're here to win. And what winning looks like is building the best possible product and the best experience for our users. The best engineers are the ones that are ultimately aligned on what we're trying to do and have the autonomy and agency to actually go and engage with and solve these very hard problems. And notably missing from that is, what their pedigree or their background or educational experience is, right? We have machine learning engineers who have come from a wide background of experience and both sort of like professional experience and educational experience, and the thing that draws us all together, that makes us all successful, is their ability to get shit done.
Yeah.
And it's the ability to sort of do whatever it takes to really ensure that we're making the best possible product.
Yeah.
Um, so when I screen in these interviews or I'm looking for a candidate, what I'm really looking for is, what is the tenacity and grit you have to engage with really meaty and technically challenging problems? How excited are you to learn about and leverage some of the new technologies that have come into the space? What does that curiosity look like? How do you stay recent and relevant, and why do you do that? Leveraging these tools to solve actual problems, right? And so from that perspective, what's especially important in this role is machine learning engineer is a very active contributor among all of our other engineers. We organize into product pods.
Hmm.
So a product pod is a combination of machine learning engineers, software engineers, designers, product managers. We operate in 2 week sprints. And so, you're a member of this team, that is ultimately building this product and evaluated at the end of the day on how many users are using it, how many of them are sticking with the product, how many customers are we able to sign up because of that. And so, the day to day is going to look like your typical sort of machine learning workflows where you're training models or benchmarking data sets or leveraging new techniques or research to build better models. But alternatively, you're going to be touching the code base really heavily. You're going to be integrating these capabilities into the product. You're going to be designing new architectures or subsystems or APIs. And so, what we're looking for here is really somebody who can, who might not necessarily just be focused on one element of the research or not be focused on one element of the engineering. We're looking for people who can sort of cross that gamut and really understand that in order to use and make these products effective, you have to be able to cross these boundaries and think about the holistic picture of what you're building and why it matters for our customers.
Right. So let me get this, like, just kind of like the full picture of who this person needs to be. So they've done machine learning work either as like side projects or professionally. They're able to obviously like talk through that at a deep level. They also, because they are deploying code, it can't be that like just model focused machine learning person. It has to be
Right.
ideally that person who kind of grew up in software engineering.
I
And
think that's right.
and then the other piece of it is you haven't explicitly said it, but like I feel like it's what I'm hearing is they have to really be able to think about business impact because the way that your product teams are set up. So it is this kind of, I always think the trifecta. They're business oriented. So if I interview someone and is all they talk to me about is the tech and they're not able to talk about the business impact of anything that they built, that's not, if you're that type of engineer, this isn't the right role for you. You have to be able to do some of the work that typically a back-end engineer would do, and then the machine learning. It's not you have to have accomplished A, B, and C at whatever pedigree, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. Maybe putting it another way, uh, I think that most of the ML candidate interview experience is one where you're being evaluated on the breadth of your experience and the depth of that experience. If you're interviewing for an ML position, you're going to be potentially tested on your computer vision, your natural language, your linear regression, the different architecture types, the different evaluation or accuracy scores, on top of the statistical methods that we use and the infrastructure and the operational side of things. We care a little bit less about the overall breadth
Okay.
and depth. It is important that a candidate does have some exposure and familiarity here. We move really quickly. We have small teams. We want to make sure that, when you start at the company, you're capable of getting your hands dirty and learning on your own. And so if you're trying to learn all of these things for the very first time, go ahead.
That breadth that you addressed in regards to like machine learning, which is quite large.
Yeah.
The when they're coming in and the work that they're going to be doing is really targeted towards what?
Way, I think the important thing that we evaluate and test in our interviews is how quickly you can learn.
Mhm.
When we think of our technical interviews, you talk to 10 engineers, and every single one of them will tell you that there is something fundamentally broken around how we hire engineers. The
Yeah.
typical standard is the leak code interview, right? Where you're given some puzzle that you have to remember, some algorithm that you learned in undergraduate or whatever, and you have to some unique way of applying it. But I think we've done a really good job in our interviewing process to highlight, we're obviously going to assess your ability to write code. We're going to assess your ability to engage with technical concepts. We're going to assess your ability to engage with sort of machine learning problems. But built into these exercises are very, obvious places where we're also evaluating your ability to learn something new that you might not know.
Okay.
And so for us, that's a really big thing here is sort of, how much do you know, but also how quickly do we think that you can pick up learning something new?
Yeah.
Because, again, the market's moving really quickly and there's a huge aperture for what actually consists of ML that we deliver to our customers. I think it's unreasonable to expect, or we would never find a candidate if this was the expectation, that we're hiring somebody that can do all of these things
Yeah.
and do them well and do them fast.
When you're talking about learning, one of the things that I think about to be a successful candidate in that type of interview atmosphere is you have to feel comfortable and have a genuine conversation with your team.
It's a big part of it is the candidate experience, making sure that they're feeling supported and comfortable in the interview. Similarly, we've designed our interviews to very naturally follow that progression where it's like, okay, there's an expectation of, okay, I'm giving an answer, and giving that answer, we try to draw the candidates out if they're struggling to articulate thoughts, or maybe there's some element of nerves. Everybody's got a little bit of that. Certainly, I know this is true for myself.
Yeah.
And then we start exposing, through the interview journey, through the journey of the question,
Mhm.
we start layering on additional levels of complexity, and eventually we're going to hit something that we know a candidate hasn't done or hasn't been exposed to in a while, or manager. I would say probably the more important dimensions to evaluate for a candidate than how well can you solve technical problems. Like,
Mhm.
I would much rather take an engineer who had a high degree of emotional intelligence, who could take feedback well, who worked well with others, who could learn how to do something, because over the long term, I'm going to be able to get much more value out of that person than somebody who came in with all of the technical knowledge but otherwise didn't necessarily have those skills.
Yeah, I think that's it. I 100% agree. That's how hiring should be done. And this sounds like
Yeah.
a great opportunity. So thank you so much for coming on and talking about it. Hopefully, people watching will apply through the website and potentially message you. I always say, don't just blanket message. If you're going to reach out to Zach from watching this, pull out 2 to 3 things that you heard him say and be very personalized in your message. Reach out to him on LinkedIn, and then things can move forward. So thank you again so much for being on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.